where you've come from, what you've been doing, and it's been great to watch. And this is the first time we've ever talked, and I feel like I already know you. And like even the conversation offline that we've just had, I feel like I could be chatting to a mate that I've known for years. Do you know what I mean? But like you do things and you operate in a similar space to us to talk about this stuff, and like your journey's been quite inspirational, kind of where you've come from, and you again you're really open about your challenges, and you said you could talk for England, so here we go, talk for England, Amy, go for it.
Hi, thank you so much. And yeah, it's been lovely to actually speak to you. It is so funny making friends online, isn't it? Because you do get to know people, which is lovely. So yeah, I am open about my own mental health. And I think that where that all started actually was because I was an accountant for nearly 20 years. And my last role was in the fire service. And I was fortunate enough to be given the role of strategic lead for mental health and wellbeing alongside the head of finance, property and payroll, because I had been open about my own mental health journey. I've been open about practicing mindfulness. I've been open about my struggles and what I needed. So when the time came, after I'd had an involvement in the employee engagement work and my boss could see that I was probably better with people than spreadsheets, he asked me if I wanted to get involved in that work. And I jumped at the chance. And I think that that's where my love of people, which I've always had, I do like other people and human beings, and just sort of caring for others, and my own practice, my own mindfulness journey, that of like me and my family, particularly my mum, sort of all started to come together. And then I started to do some learning around mental health first aider, mental health awareness. I started to listen more, started to have conversations with people across the fire service, of which I'm sure you can imagine there is trauma and difficult things to
Yeah,
deal
of
with.
course.
And so conversations just started to open up. And I started to realize that I loved having the conversations, but a lot of the conversations were done in the very similar way, very serious, sometimes quite stifled. And what I wanted to bring was more openness, if possible, a little bit more lightheartedness. And that's what we started to do. And then we worked on the strategy and the action plan and all of that, formal stuff. But what really stood out for me was the people, the conversations, and the learning that I went through, and how good it felt just for me personally as well to be able to share my stuff and for us all to support each other. And so that was the catalyst for where I am now, leaving my accountancy career and talking about mindfulness and mental health and hopefully supporting other people.
Yeah. So did that kind of change come with resistance, or was it almost seen as a bit of fresh air? Because obviously the fire service traditionally is seen as a big macho kind of industry, and there's a lot of guys. Obviously, there's a lot of girls in there as well. But like, was it met with resistance, or did you kind of say, "Oh, this is a breath of fresh air, and we've been waiting for someone like you to come in and
Yeah.
do it"?
It is still predominantly male environment. You're right, even though there's a
Yeah.
lot of work to try to change that. It is. And no, I actually think it was quite welcomed, because especially I think in that environment that can be tough, people want to talk about it. People want to help each other, but sometimes they don't quite know how to go about it, what's the right thing to do. And then when you're building something like a strategy, you're never going to have all the answers. And I was always really honest and open about that. Like, we're all learning all of the time. There is no end goal. We're not going to tick a box and this is done. And I actually feel like it was really embraced, luckily, because I know not all organisations are like that. And even from, like our chief officers being on board with it and starting to be open about their stuff as well. I mean, we went into COVID as this strategy and action plan were coming to fruition. And like one of our chief execs did a blog about his mental health and how he was feeling during the pandemic. And I mean, that to me was one of the really big turning points, to have that openness all the way throughout the organization. So I don't think it was met with that much resistance. There's always going to be some people that aren't on board, but overall it was a welcome thing. And I think because we're human beings and human beings make up a workplace, you have to understand and open up the human side of things. So I think most places it will be welcomed. People are still just a bit scared of it, like iffy about, what's this gonna open up the flood doors to. But ultimately health is health. Doesn't matter whether it's physical or mental. So yeah, for me it was a really difficult experience, because it is hard to figure out what to do, but it was a really positive experience.
So what would you suggest for somebody that's kind of watching this and thinking, we would love to have that degree of change and implement it? Because like what you said has been really positive, and the willingness for people to talk. I mean, two questions really. Did that take you by surprise initially? And then obviously back to that first one, is somebody trying to implement this and bring this in, no matter how big or small the organization, like what's the first steps to start doing it?
Yeah, so the first bit, did it take me by surprise? I suppose a little bit, because let's think about the stereotype of a predominantly male environment. You would think people aren't going to want to open up, but to be honest, it was bloody beautiful that these guys came forward and wanted to tell their story. And a couple in particular sort of took the lead on that to talk about specific events that have happened and how that had affected their mental health, how it affected their work and their family. And once one starts and another starts, then it opens up and gives permission for other people to do it, which is why conversation is so important in our wider society around mental health, as we all know, as why we're having this conversation now. So yes, a little bit surprising, but that soon went for me when I realized that we're all just human, no matter what age, gender, whatever we are. People do want to speak up, and they did. So it was amazing. And in terms of sort of where to start, I think something that is often missed is ask your people. You cannot sit behind a closed door and make all the decisions yourself. Even with the best intentions in the world, that ain't going to work, in my opinion. And that's what we did. We asked people, where are the gaps? What do you need? How do you feel about what we already have in place? Like, go and ask your people, and take a step back and have a look. Go back to the beginning. Don't try to think, well, we've already got all of this that's doing X, Y, Z. Just think, if you didn't have anything and you did like a risk assessment of, like you would with physical health, what could impact people's mental health in this organization? That's where you need to start. Start there. Start assessing where you are at and speak to your people. And then you can start from there.
Right. That's so powerful. And I worked in the big corporates before, and it's almost felt like a little bit of a tick box exercise for a lot of people. And you're talking like years ago, and hopefully that's changed. And there's a big sea of change, and things are getting better. But it still feels like a little bit of a tick box exercise for a lot of people. And I think a lot of it, like you said there, is just because you haven't had that conversation with the people that kind of sit below that. It's done at a very high level and implement these high level strategies and policies and procedures that, let's be honest, a lot of the time just don't really work.
No, and I think one of the big reasons that is because even now when we look at things, people are forgetting the basics. So when people say mental health and wellbeing strategy, and I hear this so much now in my role, I guess, on the other side of being a consultant or a speaker, people think, oh yeah, well, we're going to have this event, or we're going to have this phone number, or we're going to have this support thing, or we're going to have this app. That absolutely ignores the basics that affect mental health around workload, how your managers deal with situations, the support that you have within your teams. All of those basics are not really mental health specific, but they can impact on mental health. Even down to policies around parental leave, policies around sickness, policies around ill health. All of those sort of HR policies feed into the basics of feeling supported, heard, and respected at work. That impacts your mental health, and recognized. So when you start to do that risk assessment, when you start to talk to your people, you realize that it's not this end point of when something goes wrong or the shit hits the fan, what do we have to help? It's the stuff before that that we need to be focusing on. That is a massive part of your strategy. A strategy isn't what are we going to do when there's a problem. A strategy isn't an event or a tick box. That is part of it, but it's all the basic stuff as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've done that. You've made such a big impact in the fire service. That's obviously lit a fire in you, and almost by accident. Is that fair?
Yeah.
which is nuts, but like at the same time, that's amazing that somebody's seen that in you to think this is the woman who's going to make a difference. Because let's be honest, the fire service is massive. It's not a small organization. It's huge, isn't it? So that all impacted nationally. Is that what
no
happened?
So I think people don't know about how, and I didn't know before I joined the fire service, so in the UK, you have fire services sort of by county. So London Fire Brigade, as an example, is a fire service. And some of them are unitary authorities and some of them are run by councils. So it's all very complicated. It's not national, but they are still big organisations in themselves. It's a lot of people to serve a county, a lot of firefighters, a lot of support staff as well. So that was my county, but I'm sure, I hope that since I've left, that hopefully that's bled out to other conversations. I know that they talk about it a lot more on the national level. So yeah, but it was still an amazing piece of work. I'm really proud of it. I'm glad that got finished off before I left. So it was sort of by accident, but at the same time, my peers had always said to me, it's so weird that you're in finance because you're so good with people. And one of my best mates there had said to me, you won't do this forever. You won't be in finance forever. You won't even be in the fire forever. And I'm going, yeah, I will. I will. What are you talking about? But here we are now. He could obviously see something within me that I hadn't quite seen in myself. And even leaving the fire service was sort of accidental, but was off the back of my own mental health struggles. And so, yeah, it's all worked out well in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you mind talking about it? Like when you said you've had your mental health struggle, like what happened?
So I had my little boy at the end of 2018, and it's weird because I'd always known I was a little bit different. I've grown up with, my granddad was addicted to alcohol. My mum's been through a couple of episodes of depression. And so we've always been quite an open, close family, which I think has been a very positive thing because we'd always talk about it. We'd always support each other. I always wanted to be a mum. I had been through miscarriage the year before. So I was really excited to be having my little boy. Always wanted to be a mum. It was going to be the best thing ever. And then I had him and it absolutely floored me. And I just felt like I wasn't managing at all. I wasn't enjoying it. I felt low. It just floored me in every way. I just didn't feel like myself. And my health worker said to me, this sounds like postnatal anxiety. So that was the conversation that was had. That's what I realized I was dealing with, which, by the way, I'd never even heard of. I'd heard of postnatal depression. I'd never heard of postnatal anxiety. So once I'd got over the initial, we all know, baby blues, that low mood, the low mood didn't stay, but the ability to function in a way that was normal for me went. I was not comfortable leaving the house. I felt like I was in panic mode a lot of the time. I was overthinking things, and that was the anxiety. But if you stood me on a stage in front of people to talk, could still do it. It was all around my little one. And so I started to be open with the people around me. I started to ask for help. I told work, the fire service at the time, what was going on. My mum was around a lot because I needed that support. And fast forward a couple of years, I got to the point where I was just sitting looking at my laptop every day, not functioning. I just wasn't doing my work. And so I got signed off work with anxiety and burnout because we've been through COVID as well. I was waiting for an ADHD diagnosis because of these conversations I'd had with my doctor about how I was feeling. And I got signed off work. So with that little bit of time for reflection, I started to assess what I was doing, why I was doing it, how I was feeling. And my boss came to me at home and just said to me, do you really want to be here? And my answer was no, I didn't. I felt like I'd achieved a lot in my career, but I just wasn't enjoying it anymore. I wasn't feeling driven to do it. And I just thought, I'm going to take the plunge and do the thing that I love. And I've been teaching mindfulness on the side to mums for ages, since the beginning of COVID. So that's what I decided to do. And here we are now.
And literally both feet jumped in and just sink or
Yeah.
swim time. Like that's
I have always had that attitude in life though, like just go do it.
That's a bold move, isn't it? It's like you've gone from a really structured, secure environment, albeit that was probably part of why you kind of struggled as well, to just both feet in. Let's crack on.
Yeah.
How long ago was that then? When did you do that? When did you start?
So I was signed off in July, August 2021, and I left same time as I got my diagnosis in September 2021. So it's been 2 years. It's been 2 years.
Wow.
It's flown by.
They actually got the party poppers and the streamers out, really, shouldn't I?
It's been hard though, mate. It has been
Oh
hard
man, I bet.
work.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I was going to apply for a job at the end of last year. Let's not sugarcoat this.
Mm.
It was that first year, you know, building a brand new. It's not like I left accountancy to be an accountant. Like a brand new thing that I decided to do. I mean, I think it was a good thing that I'd already started my social media back in 2018, because I did feel like I had something inside of me to share. I've been on my mindfulness journey for well over 10 years, and I felt like I had something to share. So I'd started my social media. I think Instagram was the first, just sharing little quotes and little things that I was learning, which I think held me in a good stead because I already had a little bit of an audience. And like I say, I was teaching mindfulness to mums because I loved it. I was working in the fire service. I had a little baby, but in the evenings, every Tuesday evening, every Sunday evening, I taught mindfulness to mums, 8-week courses, because I loved it. And I think that gave me the confidence to do what I wanted to do because I knew it was good and I knew it made a difference to people. But that first year was really bloody hard. And the end of last year, I was thinking, is this even feasible? I'm going to look for jobs. And then this year, it all came to fruition, started to come to fruition. So yeah.
And I think a lot of
Hard
business
work.
owners can relate to that. Like I certainly can. Like there's points in my journey where I thought, is it worth it? And you're kind of putting all these hours in, and like, and I've said this on a couple of calls with other people, like those first few months of going self-employed for me, from an employed position of being employed for 17 or 20 odd years to like no paycheck coming at the end of the month. It was like reality check. You need to work your ass off, sunshine. It was pure and utter fear of, if I don't do this, I can't pay the bills.
Yeah.
And it's a great motivator, but I can understand like that crushes a lot of people. And it went away initially, and then it's probably similar to you at the 12-month mark, it really came back, and I'm like, right, we're 12 months in now. First set of accounts are being done. Do I want to do this for another 12 months? And I was really on the fence with it.
Yeah, because it's relentless, right? I'm not being funny, but
Yeah.
I don't have anybody else. I am doing this completely on my own, and so I have to go out there, and especially when you're first starting and you're building up that reputation, that credibility, and everything else, you have to go and get it. You literally have to go and get it, and it is relentless, because if you even stop for a month, then you're not planning in the next month. So you know it's bloody hard work, but at the same time, it's been the most wonderful experience. I've met the most amazing people, and I feel so fulfilled in a really deep way that it does all feel worth it.
Yeah. So what's happened in your second year to change from that, I'm ready to chuck it all into, like where you are now? And we talked a little bit off air about some of the stuff you've done recently, which has been crackers. Like what happened in that 12 months to get you to the point of where you're all in, you're clearly enjoying and loving what you're doing and making such a positive impact?
So number one is I didn't give up. And by the way, no shame in changing your mind at all. I think that is also protecting your mental health. If something isn't working and you do try other things and it's still not working, you know, but I do think that there has to be an element of getting through that tough bit and not giving up. And I've always believed in myself. I do believe that what I do is good, and I love what I do, and I do want to make my little bit of change in the world. You know, if I think about what legacy I want to leave behind or what I want to do. So I didn't give up. The second thing was I got an accountability partner, coach, whatever you want to call him, Ben, bless his heart. And that really made a change, because I think when you are working alone, you haven't got anyone to answer to, and it's very easy to be sidetracked by shiny, exciting things that don't actually get you to where you need to be. And so he really helped me focus on doing the things that I had to do that were probably a little bit boring or mundane, but needed to be done consistently to keep like the leads coming in and to keep the conversations going and to keep putting myself out there. So that was another big thing, I think, was having that accountability partner. It doesn't have to be that necessarily, but whether you've got a community or a mate or whatever, I do think that you need to have sometimes that support and someone to sort of help hold you accountable. And then I've just been myself, which I know it sounds a bit wanky, but I think that a lot of time people are trying to be something maybe they're not, and I've just been me. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I hope, now that we've chatted and you've met me, that when you see what I am online. That is just what I am in life. It's how I speak, it's how I look, it's what I do. And I think that has then helped me build my confidence, which then it's like that compound effect. So yeah, I think they're the top things. Number one, not giving up. Number two, having that accountability. And number three, just being myself.
So how do you manage the dark days? Because there's always some when you run a business. There's always going to be some in life anyway. Like, how do you cope with that now, and what do you do to
I do
push
think
through?
my
Or
mindfulness is a big part of the way that I am. Mindfulness
okay,
isn't just meditation, by the way. Let me just quickly say this, because otherwise I'm doing myself a disservice as a mindfulness rebel. Mindfulness isn't just meditation. And I was actually feeding back to someone recently about a book that they've written, because they were using the word mindfulness, and I was like, but it's not mindfulness, it's mindful meditation. Even looking at research, meditating for 6 days, a mindful meditation is not the same as practicing mindfulness or doing a mindfulness course. Mindfulness is a mindset. It's an attitude that we have towards the world. It's the way that we live our everyday. And I'm not saying I'm mindful all of the time, but I have elements of mindfulness in my everyday life pretty much every day. And it does shift your brain into being able to recognize that today is a bad day, not a bad life, that sort of thing. And if I am having a bad day or a dark day, like last night I had a wonderful day, but I don't feel too good today. I've had a really bad tummy ache. It's the time of the month. I'm not shy to say that. And I feel really tired and lethargic, and there's things that I need to get done, but am I going to do them well today? No. So today I'm talking to you, and that's about it. I'm going to have a rest day, and I'm going to eat the things that nourish me. I'm going to rest, and I'm going to only do if there's anything that I really need to do. And I think that that's a really important thing, to not push through when things are tough, but to also know that tomorrow is a new day, and you can have that shift in mindset and hopefully go and get it the next day. And I think that that's one of the things that we see in hustle culture, isn't it? That it's like you've got to keep pushing through no matter what. And I guess things are changing now, but it's almost like, yeah, everything's great, nobody has a bad day. We all have bad days. But I think it's about working on that mindset when you're in the good days as well. So practicing these things when things are well, so that you don't wait for things to be crap to be able to look after yourself. Does that make sense? So being a bit more proactive in that stuff. But yeah, we all have them, and I have them, and I just go and ask for help. I talk to my mates and I say out loud, today's a really bad day. I want to jack it all in. I can't do this. I feel poorly. And then now give me my little pep talk that I need, that I can't give myself that day. But most days I'm quite good at giving myself a little pep talk.
yeah, but that's good, isn't it? Like you it's that self-awareness piece, isn't it? Of being able to say,
Exactly.
some days I can't give 100%. Some days I might not even be able to give 10%. I've just got to put the brakes on. But like you've said, like we both use social media a lot. And there's so much bullshit around it, isn't it? Like you see it all the time. Like you said, everyone's having a great old time. And if you're not earning 250 grand a year, you feel like an absolute failure, which is just utter shite, isn't it? It's sometimes hot. You've got to step back from it, and that's what I loved about you. It's like you are you, and that comes across. And if you've been on social media for any length of time, you can recognize that in people now. And if you just kind of sit there mindlessly scrolling and stuff and not really paying attention to what's going on, you can get sucked in by it and spend hours and hours and hours doing it.
By the way, none of us are immune to that. None of us are immune to that. And you have to, and what you're saying is, well, self-awareness is the key. And that is where mindfulness all starts with. Self-awareness is the most helpful thing that you can have in this life, because you can recognize what is normal for you, what is unhelpful for you, and you can recognize things like that when you're going into that scrolling, because you need to recognize that to bring yourself back to your real world. The only thing you should be comparing yourself to is yourself, and I think that that's really difficult to do sometimes, and especially in those dark days where you feel like, oh, everybody's doing X, Y, and Z, I should be doing this, that, and the other. To bring yourself back to the real world, your real life with your real people that actually exist with you, so different to the world that's online, so different. And when you can do that, you can pull yourself back to your real life with those loved ones around you, or the actual stuff that you're dealing with. Absolute shift in mindset. It makes such a huge difference, but it's really hard to do sometimes. Really easy to get sucked in.
So do you think it's harder, because like you said, you're quite open that you've been diagnosed with ADHD? Do you think it's harder to do that having the ADHD as well?
the dopamines
Well, you
you
don't
get
know, you
from
don't know any
social.
different because it's hard, isn't it? Because
No,
that
but
you are you, but like it's having ADHD. I know a lot of people that do it. I'm fairly confident. I've got it as well. I get told regularly by my other half when I'm, and I hadn't realized it was a thing, right? Stimming, like singing songs. Like I'm sat at my desk just singing them, and she's like, "Will you shut up?" And it all the time, like little.
stimming,
And
by the way, like with phrases, especially when I'm around my little boy and I have got that anxiety of just silly phrase, like I don't even know, boom shakalaka, boom shakalaka, like I can, and now I'm starting to recognize it's so, but it's so,
yeah.
but knowledge is power. This is the thing that I always say: knowledge is power. So by knowing that about myself, yes, I grew up till the age of 37 not knowing this about myself, but knowing I was a bit different. And oh my goodness, the mourning period of finding that out and thinking about how things could have been different, but then the realization of, okay, well, now I know why these things happen and I can manage it. And the dopamine hit you get from social media is a problem for everybody, let alone for me. And I know I'm doing it, but I think because I have such good self-awareness and present moment awareness from my practices, if I am scrolling, it's almost a conscious decision now that I'm that's what I'm doing for a bit, because I do notice it, and I can almost say to myself, you've just spent 20 minutes scrolling through Instagram reels, get get a grip, get yourself out and do
Yeah.
something. And then I have to move my body, I have to get up from the chair and go and do something. So self-awareness is power, knowledge is power, but absolutely it is so easy to slip into that, but I'm quite good at catching it now.
Awesome. So what's next? Like what's the next year going to bring, and what's the bigger impact for you?
So my work in youth football and schools is something that I'm concentrating on for the long-term stuff. That is not going to be a quick fix or anything. It's going to be tough, I imagine, but I'm determined. We've just started the grassroots project with Stephen Colker behind the white lines. Had our first session on Monday. So we're just basically testing it out. We're just testing out what the impact could be if we take mindfulness and the mental health conversation into grassroots teams. I really want to get into academies. I think it should be part of, like, my two of my godchildren have been in football since they were 5. So I've seen them now. One's the age of 13. We need to capture our children and young people where they are. Football is one of them. There's a lot of kids there, and they're going to be in a position of not coming to fruition for what's something they've trained for a long time. So that's why I went for football, because there's a lot of children that we could capture there. And then the work in schools that I've been doing, it's just landed so well. It's made such an impact that I believe it should be on the national curriculum, and that is the work that I'm investigating at the moment to try to campaign for that. And I know it's not going to be easy, and who knows what's going to happen, but we need to have those conversations. You can't wait until they're teenagers. You can't wait until we're in our 20s and in our 30s to start talking about mental health. We need to do it earlier, and we need to be giving kids tools. It's not just talking. There needs to be action. You need to be aware of your mental health. Okay, great. What does mental health mean? This, that, and the other. So what are we going to do about it? Now, there's lots of different things, but for me, obviously, as a mindfulness teacher, I believe that mindfulness is one of those things that we can teach early. My 4-year-old practices mindfulness. My 4-year-old can tell you what mindfulness is. My 4-year-old comes up with practices. Yep. And for him, when he's getting angry, agitated, he's in pain, he practices some of those techniques. And we practice mindfulness when we go for a walk by the water and we talk about what we can see and what we can hear. He doesn't necessarily need to understand why that is helpful, but we're just doing it. That's a practice, and he will always have it. Working with 9 and 10-year-olds, who, by the way, I've been in some schools in quite deprived areas that are self-harming, and seeing how they take on some of those practices really quickly to help themselves in the moment has been heartbreaking, but very, very eye-opening at the same time. So that's a really long way of me saying that I would like to try to make a change to what we're seeing at the moment, which is something like 75% of mental ill health issues can be recognized before the age of 14, and we need to start to recognize that and start to impact that, because we know that people are struggling.
I think we've read the same thing. Like I've heard that statistic this week as well, and that it like children, there's such a big mix in education. Like the school that my kids go to feels like they're very academically focused, and it feels like it's almost gone back in time, where there's other schools locally that are very much like treat the kids as individuals and people and development and all this kind of stuff. And I think like that first approach, just for me, that doesn't quite sit right. You know, it's about looking at the bigger picture, because if we can help and support in that stage, like what a future these kids are going to have, rather than thinking they just need to focus on getting good grades at GCSE and A levels, and if they don't, then they're a failure.
Well, what's that even going to mean if you are not well? And
Exactly.
physically
Yeah.
and mentally. That's
That's
what we
it.
say now. Like, what's the point in having a successful business if you can't enjoy it because you're not well? And I think that there also needs to be some real focus on learning and awareness around tech, particularly the online world.
Yeah.
It isn't going anywhere, even though I wish it would, a part of me. And that's not the area that I work in, but I also think that's a big part of the picture, educating our children from a younger age about the potential impacts that it can have, and also how to manage it, also how to be safe online. All of that, I think, feeds into this mental health picture as well. And I think that it has to be on the national curriculum, otherwise it won't get done, because schools don't have funding for stuff that is outside of that unless they've got special funding for something. So yeah, it'll be hard, but I think that there'll be a lot of people that will get on board with it, and I hope, even if we made 1% of change, that at least it's change in the right direction. So
well, kids are accepting of this stuff. Like my kids are a lot more accepting about change and different viewpoints and different cultures than I ever was, because I just wasn't aware of it. It was all academic, sports, academic, sport, all that, and that was just the push, you know. And it's a very different world, and it's like the education system needs to adapt and be able to support that.
And we need to give our kids some credibility, and we need to also look at ourselves as parents, because we are on our phones and social media a lot, and we're probably not paying as much attention as we should do. But we need to give our kids some credit, because I work with people in organisations. I volunteer for my local mental health charity with adults who are not mentally well, and I've worked in schools, and I tell you what, kids are the ones that don't question it. They might laugh, we have a giggle, they come out with all this random stuff, but they do not question it. When I'm in an organisation, it'll be questioned. You'll get arms crossed, you'll get the huffs and the puffs and whatever else. Kids don't do that. Kids are open to it, and that is why it is easier to catch them there before they get jaded, informed, influenced by the world as we get to those later teen years.
He says 74% under 14.
It's around 75%, something like that. Yeah,
phenomenal.
It's high, yeah. And then the other bit is, like, I just love speaking. I love going onto stages and talking about mindfulness and busting those misconceptions and making people laugh, and just bringing a little bit of that element of playfulness and curiosity. That's what I always talk about, to the mental health conversation, to what mindfulness actually means, because it's not all this crap that's been peddled in the media and on social media. So yeah, more of that hopefully over the next year, being on stages, talking, sharing my experiences, and the how behind some of these conversations as well. Like, how do we change things? How do we practice new ways of doing things? So yeah, it's all good fun.
Awesome. That's been great. Thank you so much for coming on, giving us some of your time to talk about this stuff. I've loved that, and there's so much of that you can take away. It's been really positive, and I think your energy and how you delivered this is infectious. Like, I'm going to come away from this feeling inspired to go and do more, and like kids, when they're on stage seeing that as well, we feel exactly the same. So well done, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for everything you're doing.
I'll just stop the recording now.